This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of July 27th, 2026. Alongside my tag team partner, Matt Mascardi, I'm Damian Rollis on today's Countdown. The anti-woke finally get rid of an Uncle Herschel hater at Cracker Barrel. I didn't like saying any of that.
Wow.
$100 billion CEO equity awards have become old news. The anti-DEI crackdown at U.S. boards continues. Shareholders suddenly like governance proposals again. And on the big vote, Matt looks at CEOs in the hot seat. Is that right? I got that right?
Yeah, hot seats.
All right, I got to learn how to talk. Let's go to our headlines. First of all, sad news. New Carpenter Technology CEO and Director Brian Malloy passed away just 3 weeks after he became CEO. The former CEO and chair, Tony Thene, is coming back to take over again.
Is this why they put the former CEO as an executive chair now?
Well, no,
Does this
because...
justify it?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't know that... Yeah, if he was the director, maybe Tony had stayed already as the executive. No, this is not why. This doesn't happen very often.
Got it. Okay.
Cracker Barrel CEO Julie Masino is out after MAGA backlash to Uncle Herschel logo change. At least that's according to one headline. She's getting about $5 million in severance. The new CEO is David Deno, who comes from such illustrious food brands as Burger King, Pizza Hut, Quiznos, Yum Brands, Bloomin Brands, Outback Steakhouse, Krispy Kreme, etc., etc.
Best Buy and Bloomin Brands, aren't these like not great brands?
The wisdom here, I guess, is that instead of fixing any of the problems, they're kind of bringing in a
guy who looks like Uncle Herschel.
Yeah, an older retired gentleman who's just going to kind of keep kicking the can down the road.
Oh, okay. That's a strategy.
At Copart, CEO Jeff Liaw is stepping down. Former CEO Jay and current executive chair Jay Adair is returning, boomeranging back into the CEO role. Jeff Liaw is leaving the board and the company. He's not sticking around. This is a strange board. The board has two chairs. I've never seen this structure before. These aren't vice chairs. These aren't co-chairs. The board has a chair, a regular chair. This is their language. That's the founder, Willis Johnson, who controls 40% of board influence. And they also have an executive chair. That was Jay Adair, who is now also the CEO again. He has 38% of influence. And Jay Adair is the son-in-law of the chair, Willis Johnson. I've never seen this before. This is craziness.
Are you sure they didn't, it wasn't like this chair has been donated by Willis Johnson? It's the actual chair?
I can't know this. And at Snowflake, the last headline, CEO Performance Award for Sridhar Ramaswamy, worth up to $100 billion. I mean, it used to be a time when I would see like $20 million equity award and we would be flabbergasted, right? Absolutely flabbergasted. Not to mention like 100 million, 500 million, 1 billion. I mean, even how absurd is $1 billion for a single...
We're skipping all those now.
100... It's a snowflake of all. This isn't like Apple. This is Snowflake. Anyway, that's the. Let's stay with money. Let's stick with some stupid money stories. So again, I looked at we've been off for a little while. So I'm looking at 8K filings since the end of June. Here are some of the stupid money stories I found. Fastenal has a new CEO, Jeffrey Watts, and they're just now appointing him to the board. So he became CEO first, and they appointed him to the board. He's going to receive an annual cash retainer of $50,000 for his service as a director, which is something that is not done.
Yeah, why does he need...
I don't know. Executives don't get extra money for being on the board.
Not usually.
But they do at Fastenal. At Franklin Resources, a one-time special $15 million retention equity awards to 4 named executive officers, including the CEO, Jennifer Johnson. Again, like, these things used to be such aberrations that they were in the governance circles would be considered mind-blowing. Like a sudden special $15 million equity award off the pay policy, off the normal pay policy. People would be shocked.
Jeff Sonnenfeld would call you a governista right now.
At Archer, with pride, I would like him to call that. Archer Daniels Midland, a $19 million golden hello. And that's not to the CEO, that's the COO, Jeff Rowe. So they're getting $20 million now for joining companies. Similar story at L3 Harris Technologies, a special one-time equity award to 3 named executive officers, totaling about $25 million for all 3 of them. And then this other weird one at FedEx, they established a one-time special cash bonus pool for all of the eligible managing directors and above, and that's about 1,100 people.
Oh, well, that's
included.
nice.
It is, but included in that is CEO Rajesh Subramaniam, who's getting an extra $2 million in cash. Why does he have to be a part of it?
Why is he in the extra cash bonus pool?
This is awkward.
Well, that's exactly how you get your CEO extra cash.
Yes.
That is cash. It's a cash bonus pool, right? It's straight cash.
Untraceable cash money.
Yeah.
We have another story of a board director leaping into the C-suite. This is like one of my favorite trends of the year. At Ulta Beauty, Kelly Garcia will transition from a director to chief technology officer. That's a good one. Good transition.
Oh,
there.
well, not CEO.
But still.
But still, yeah.
And then I have a bunch of like leadership boondoggle stories. We see a lot of these constantly. American Healthcare REIT CEO Danny Prosky resigns but stays on the board.
Didn't resign.
Jeffrey Hansen's the new CEO and will continue to serve as chair. So I guess he went from chair to CEO. And then they have a new lead independent director, Scott Esty. So I guess we'll clean up all this mess.
This is very confusing.
I know. All these are confusing. That's the problem. Procter & Gamble. Executive Chair John Miller is resigning from the board and the company. The CEO becomes the chair. And then they're reappointing the old independent lead director, Joseph Jimenez, to be the new. He's boomeranging back
to lead independence.
I have more. Same thing happened at Entegris. Basically, I'm not going to go over the details. Let's move on to this category I call down to 2 women, which is remember that 3 women used to be the acceptable threshold for women on the board. Now it's like nobody cares about that anymore. First, I looked at the overall data from all the AK filings. Women accounted for 17% of all additions, and yet 21% of all departures. So only 17% of all additions. Men, on the other hand, accounted for 83% of additions. So the net gain for men was 28 over last month, and the net gain for women was 5. And this is at the biggest companies in America. At Paychex, they're down to 2 women, Kara Wilson resigning. At Natera, which according to their website, the first sentence, dedicated to oncology, women's health, and organ health, right? Women's health, right?
Yeah.
Monica Bertagnoli resigned. They have 1 female director. 1. Women's health. You're not surprised anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to be surprised.
And then finally, Kohl's still has 2 women on the board, but they did something rare, which is that they're promoting a director to chair, and it's a woman. You don't see a lot of women in these roles, unfortunately. Wendy Arland becoming chair at Kohl's. John Schlifsky stepping down. He of 27% influence, stepping down after 15 years. So that's a positive leadership change over there at Kohl's. Okay, let's move on to our proxy cage matches. And a bit of a twist. I guess this is surprising news out of the SEC. Activist investors in the U.S. must now disclose the identities of their clients in regulatory filings. Everything I read said that no one was expecting this rule change. So they're essentially going to force hedge funds, activists, investors to disclose the financing of their activist campaigns, and they have to file that in proxies and Schedule 13Ds. Now, who's happy about it? What shouldn't surprise you is who's happy about this.
Yeah, only companies can be happy.
Exactly, the companies, and it's really the management themselves. This was like the SEC's throwing a bone to the companies. So, I mean, I love disclosure, but I don't know. I'm a little bit mixed on this news.
This is, I mean, when taken with the fact that you can't do exempt solicitations unless you have 3 million, you can't, like, shareholder proposals are now no action. Universal proxy card is being used, but there's all sorts of disclosure rules. If you're using it, that the company doesn't have to do themselves, meaning like the company can nominate a director and give you no reasons for the nomination, but you have to go through paperwork. All of it funnels to the company is no longer run or held or owned by the investors. I mean, the whole point of activist investing is to use your ownership stake in a company to influence change. This would also mean that for Nelson Peltz's campaign, right? Like, no one would have talked about Nelson Peltz. They would have only talked about like Perlmutter, who was all the money for that campaign. And you dissuade anyone from financing a campaign for change by forcing their names out into the open, because if you're an investor, the point isn't I'm investing because I want my name associated with change. You're investing because you want the returns along, this is the point. Right. This is very much in line with what Paul Atkins has done, which is empower companies, management of companies to reject everything a shareholder could possibly want.
I was going to say, you say companies, but shareholders are used to be kind of a part of that equation, but this is just pro-management, really. Nano Dimension and activist investor Murchison have come to an agreement. Look, I report on these activist these proxy cage matches, but they still do irritate me that it's only when activists get involved that governance suddenly matters. So at Nano Dimension, the CEO, Dave Stellan, board chair, 2 directors are all resigning. And look, that might be a positive development. I'm not suggesting it's not, but it's irritating to me that governance only matters when an activist investor enters the room.
Well, then they won't enter now because they won't get financed because they have to disclose it.
And then there was a proxy cage match at Workspace Group. Activist investor Saba was trying to get rid of the entire independent board, which was 3 men and 3 women. Saba owns 21% of shares, and their suggestion was to replace them all with 6 men, which is a bit awkward. But hey, this is the times, right? But they failed. All of the directors at Workspace got voted in, and notice how, again, like, they honor the majority vote there. All 6 directors got between 60 and 68% of support. But if they had failed the vote, would they have actually left the company? I guess they would leave the company in an activist situation. But when Jay Hoag fails the vote, he doesn't leave the company. So again, like, when activists are watching you, governance happens? Rules matter?
Well, in the Saba case, too, at Workspace, ISS and Glass Lewis sided with Saba, but picked different directors for different reasons.
Which muddles the message, I'm sure.
And I think nobody knew, because everybody steps in, finally does some due diligence, and is like, oh yeah, these directors are not that good. But they disagreed on what was good because they have no real,
subjective.
no real data behind it.
Yeah. I probably would have voted no, yes on the directors, just because, I don't know, the arrogance of a Saba coming in and replacing a board that's 50% female with just a bunch of men. Come on. Come on. Do a better job, Saba. Finally, this research out of the College of Charleston, which I thought was interesting. The headline is, when shareholder activists attack a company, its rivals may feel the heat too and change their ways. The research found that shareholder activism can create a collateral impact, a domino effect in which pressure on one company changes what its competitors are doing. And the research found that when one company changes course in response to activist pressure, its competitors frequently follow suit, even when activists have not targeted them directly. And what I love about this is that this is something that we have spent time with in the past. Like when we spent a lot of you mentioned Nelson Peltz at Disney. We also spent a lot of time at that moment discussing other media companies within the industry, asking ourselves, like, are they a target? What could happen here? So I'm glad that the research backs up that this is actually a real thing.
The downside to the research backing that up is two facts happening currently, which is activism is down in 2026 and pretty dramatically. There are fewer activist campaigns this year than there were in the past, which means you're going to have fewer positive knock-on effects for corporate change. And number two is the story that you just read, which is it's going to be harder to finance or get financing for activist campaigns, driving down even more. So it's even a little myopic of us to say company management wins, because it's not just that company's management that wins. Now you're looking at industries win, right? Like there aren't as many activists targeting the company means there aren't as many knock-on effects, means the industry doesn't change either.
Right. Let's move over to our vote results table. Not a lot of meetings. The proxy season's definitely over. I only looked at roughly 30 meetings. I referred to this in the headlines. So there were 3 governance shareholder proposals, only 3. 2 of them won. NVIDIA, simple majority voting, got 87% support. At Snowflake, majority vote for director elections, 65% support. I know it's only a sample size of 3, but how did that happen? We were talking about how nothing was winning anything. Where do these victories come from?
Well, the amazing part about these victories is Paul Atkins spent a good amount of capital in his speech targeting John Chevedden, his speech from earlier in the month, how one individual shareholder accounted for 41% of proposals, and that shareholder won 8% of them, and said that was a bad thing, that one person was monopolizing. But the reality was investors, these never win, to your point, and that they won it all should be actually an amazing thing. Then investors deeply want this. And the things that John Chevedden puts on the shareholder proposal docket is simple majority voting all the time. That's like his bread and butter.
The only thing left to say is NVIDIA had by far the most shareholder proposals, 4, and they had the only hate proposals, the anti-DEI proposals, both just still getting under 1%, routinely under 1%. So whatever, not big news. Say on pay, we have a rejection at Snowflakes. 56% said no.
That Snowflake, the $100 billion Snowflake. Yeah.
Yes, the $100 billion. Now, this is the same. What makes it worse, 70% said no last year.
They don't want to pay.
70% said no in 2025, and these fools are trying to throw a $100 billion pay package at their CEO. The thing that bothers me is that first, what bothers me at Snowflake is they have a classified board. I hate classified boards. I can't believe there's still classified boards. But none of these voters got voted out. I mean, there was a lot of dissent. There was about an average of 30% no, which is extremely high, right? But that this board is messing around with pay so much and that you keep voting it down. How are you not just voting out directors at this point?
I don't know.
56% and 70% last year had the will to say no to the company, but they can't say no to the directors. I don't understand.
Do you know when was that vote?
The Snowflake vote?
Yeah.
Within the last month, because it was since the end of June.
I mean, because the vote happened, right? It was on July 15th that the compensation committee at Snowflake granted the performance-based stock to the CEO, which means the proxy comes out in for a July vote, it comes out in what, May? At their, it's roughly 2 months before.
The proxy came out May 18th, and the meeting was June 30th.
Which means 2 weeks after they voted no to his pay. Again, they gave him pay. They
crazy.
just granted it. It's insane.
This entire board needs to be fired. But yet, investors don't make that connection. The only other thing I'll mention is... I don't know if this is a trend. I don't remember this in previous years, but where you do see regular dissent now against directors is on the boards where the board is classified. I found 7 cases just this for this show, and that's roughly 25% of all the meetings, where there was actual dissent against. No one was voted out, but still it was very high dissent.
Yeah, you're high votes against. Yeah.
So I guess that's their secret way of saying they hate the classified board structure. Is it? I don't know.
And the problem is they wait until the board is classified, and generally plurality voting is in place before they register their dissent. Right. So it's like your dissent doesn't matter at that point, right? Like, because if the board rejects, if it's a classified board and the board says, and you vote, and you happen to vote someone out and they reject the resignation of that person, they're there for 3 years. Yeah. They're not going anywhere. You can't do anything about it. You have no vote.
That's good zombie power. Yeah.
It's like amazing that investors are okay with ever investing in some of these companies.
And then finally, you'll be happy to know that the shareholders at Dell approved their Dexit, their Texit.
Yeah.
You'll be shocked to know that 97% of shareholders at Dell are happy with Michael Dell moving his Trump-loving ship over there to Texas.
That is shocking, yeah.
Yeah, shocking. All right. Upcoming annual meetings, I don't know. Nothing. I don't know. There's not much. The only one I highlighted was
quiet now.
Was microchip technology coming up in a few weeks? Because I feel like they're in the news a lot, right? Microchip? I don't know. I couldn't highlight anything here. There's nothing going on.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet. It's quiet.
So let's go to the big vote. What do you got?
All right. First, before I get to the big vote, before I talk about CEO Hotseats, I have 2 questions that I need to ask you.
No. Thought I was done.
The first question is, so I got a call from Georgeson, who's a proxy solicitor, and they do a lot of like content. They do a lot of work with activists. They're actually like, they're kind of like the people behind, votes and campaigns and stuff that you don't really know exist. They called me because
they sound like fabulous people.
I own a company called Universal Safety Products. I own the stock in the company. And I bought it because all they make is like, when you like have a plug in the wall and it's near water and it's got the automatic like circuit breaker thing in it, like the DFI switch.
But I'm going to pretend I do, yeah.
There are light switches and like it's household safety products.
Okay.
Well, a guy named Milt Alton bought a whole bunch of the stock and is trying to turn it into basically like a Bitcoin repository or some like. It's so dumb.
You mean money laundering? Can we just call it money laundering?
It's so dumb that it like hurts my brain.
Yeah.
But they didn't say this in the filings. But I got this call from Georgeson that said you haven't voted yet, and I voted by now. But I got this call from them. It said you haven't voted yet. How are you going to vote? And
Wait,
it was interesting.
Is this what they do to everyone, or someone knew you?
So they only do it when the company hires Georgeson to go out and solicit the votes to get people to vote.
Right.
And they do that because they've got a vote there that they know retail doesn't vote, it could lose, right? Mm-hmm. The vote that they wanted me to vote on, and this is the question for you, Universal Safety Products is adding Class B shares with 10 votes per share.
Stop it.
It's a 1 share, 1 vote company.
Look, I at least give them credit for asking shareholder permission.
But have you ever heard of a company adding Class B shares?
Very rarely.
And then saying nothing about who they're going to give them to.
Oh, they said don't tell you.
They didn't tell me. They said it was at their discretion to hand out the Class B shares. They needed a yes vote on actually issuing new shares and issuing Class B shares. Also on the ballot, because they needed this, was eliminating a supermajority vote, because they have to eliminate the supermajority vote first, then get the shares issued, then get the Class B issued.
Oh my God.
And then by issuing the Class B, they've allowed a supermajority vote effectively just by a bunch of people who own the Class B.
This is why they're paying for the solicitation.
I
obviously.
have never in my life in governance seen anything like it.
I assume that you said that you were going to just vote yes for everything that management wants, right?
So that was, my question is how common in this? Because my response to Georgeson was like, I'm voting no against everything management wants except the supermajority vote. Let's get rid of that so that I can vote out every director or vote against every amendment without a supermajority, right? Like, so that was the only one I voted yes on. But have you ever heard of that?
No, I mean, again, I give them credit for asking their shareholders, but it is like, yeah, you're like, will you help us develop a mechanism that screws you?
Yeah. So investors listening to this show, if you own Universal Safety Products shares, tell Milt to get out of here. They make light sockets. Like, I don't want crypto or DeFi or Bitcoin or any of these stupid things. I don't want an AI light socket. I just want light sockets. And number two, why on earth would any investor give up their rights and add Class B shares to who? Like, who's?
I guess they're chasing like higher share prices and dividends. They're chasing cash. All right, keep going.
The second question I have is about Trump Media, which I've been obsessed with.
Yeah.
Not Trump Media, the company, but the fact that I haven't read a single story that Trump Media, a publicly traded company, has not had an annual general meeting since April of 2025.
Wow. Have they even put out a proxy?
No proxy, no adjournment, no filing.
I know you know the answer to this, but remember who the last company that did this, that fooled around with?
Yeah, it was Musk.
It was Musk. Absolutely. It was Elon Musk.
But
they're not playing by the rules.
Where is the single media?
Shut it down.
Where is the single conversation piece from investors?
Well,
Why have I not read one thing?
Well, I don't cover these like I used to, but back in the day, I remember that they'd send out like delisting notices, right? Like warnings. Do they still do that?
I mean,
shouldn't this be a reason why if you don't rectify this, you could be delisted?
That's what I thought. Yes, I thought that was the thing, and I know they will never delist Trump Media because of Trump, but it seem like the kind of thing that there would be a single story about? Where is the,
even from the left wing press, I would expect to be like, hey, play by the rules.
Why isn't Mother Jones writing Trump doesn't even follow the rules of the market, right? Like they where is anything to suggest that this is not okay? Even MSCI has them at a B rating, not even a triple C for ESG ratings.
Yeah.
Their governance is only the 22nd, percentile for not even in the worst. And it's Donald Trump's kid, everybody from his cabinet, he has dual class shares, and they haven't had an annual general meeting. I'm just
haven't had a general meeting, and since the last meeting, they fired their CEO, right? The former
he stepped down.
Congressman Devin Nunes. Yeah.
All right, so you have no real answers for me except for both are unusual, and no one seems to care. Let's talk about CEOs in the hot seat. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Look, this is going to be really simple, hopefully really short, because we do talk all the time in sports about a CEO in the hot seat for losing games and basically bad play calls and should they get fired. That is like the permanent conversation. If you want it, you don't have to go that far. You can go back to the World Cup a month ago and talk about Tuchel, the manager of the England soccer team, who had a basically catastrophic meltdown in their semifinal game against Argentina.
I remember that
cost
game.
them a trip to their final because all they did was put in
defenders, yeah,
and just sat around and hoped that nothing went in. And Argentina takes shot after shot after shot, and
it was glorious. I enjoyed that game.
It was an amazing game, but not if you're an England fan, right?
No.
That coach was immediately on the hot seat after that.
I love it.
Obviously.
I love hot seats. The two big sports hot seats are coaches, managers, and then the big one for me, at least in baseball, is closers. The guys who come in at the end.
Yeah.
Because that's always like do we trust this guy? Is he going to lose his job?
How do we feel about him? They're going to get traded. They're going to get sent down to the minors. But there is no criteria for what a CEO in the hot seat looks like, except, the stock is way down and has been down. And no one actually talks about it like much other than that. But what I realized is we could set out the criteria. We have all the data. We have the technology today. So here's the criteria I set out. Tell me where I'm right and wrong first. And then I'll tell you how many companies and just a couple notable ones. Number one, obviously it can't be dual class or a founder board, right? Like there's no hot seats for a founder. Founders, they might
I
be
don't
in the
know
hot
if
seat.
I agree with this because whether it matters, I don't know. But I'm always interested in the shelf life of these tech bros, like the Bezoses, right? When will Zuck become chair and hand it off? Like, whether it matters, I don't know, but I still think it's not the same. It's not the same thing, though. You're right. It's not the same.
I'm just saying from the only thing that makes the seat hot is an
it's
investor
not consequential.
Can get rid of you.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. You're right. You're right.
And the reality is that investors don't get rid of founders unless they're 90.
It's up to them. Whenever Zuck is ready to move over, he'll do it.
It's up to him, right?
No, you're right. I don't agree with you on that one.
Okay. Here's a piece of criteria. The CEO has less than 30% influence. Meaning Jamie Dimons of the world, who are greater than 30% influence at these widely held companies, these little kings, they're running monarchies, right? It's really hard to put someone like that on the hot seat because they're so powerful on the board. The board is the one who has to get rid of them. But when they have so much influence over the board members, there's just no way that they're likely to get canned. That's the thinking there.
Yeah. Now, here's where I'm going to disagree with you, and it's a minor point. Is that what interests me is that if companies have a lot of pressure on them for a variety of reasons, at those companies where the CEO is not like a dictator, like it's less than 50%, but over 30%, could it not be possible that CEO will get the most pressure if the company really starts tanking or sucking or controversy? Like all the pressure is going to be on them?
Sure. So this is not an exclusive hot seat. I'm saying there's a dynamic between the board and the CEO, and the board fires the CEO, not investors. And so all I'm saying is the hottest hot seats are the Mike McDaniels, who is the Dolphins coach.
The hottest hot seats.
Like basically these like a coach who has a tenuous hold on power is what I'm saying, right? Like they were already an outside the box, coach, or they joined they joined and no one was really sure how good they were going to be. Like those kinds of CEOs are the ones that I'm targeting. That's not to the exclusion of the others. I'm just saying these are most definitely hot seat CEOs. Okay. Here's another piece of criteria. The gap between the CEO's power and the highest non-executive board member power is small. And
absolutely.
So basically, some non-executive board member has like not the power differentials almost non-existent. In some cases, it's flipped. Like Susan Arnold at Disney had more power than Bob Chapek, right? Like you had a non-executive director with more power than the executive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good thing.
Board deference is low, meaning that the boards do not defer to the management team. They're not beholden to them.
A healthy checks and balances in place.
The board itself is actually highly interconnected, which would suggest when you have low deference, but a interconnected board, a board where they all know each other, that the board actually is calling the shots because they have more to lose. They have all the power is held within the board. And then a company performance, obviously. Company is, I put them in the bottom third versus peers, but effectively you've got a situation where the company underperforms and all these other factors are true.
What about,
you ready for some?
Yeah, do you have what about controversies?
I didn't even do controversies.
Because that's a big one.
The controversies only matter if the performance is down, because the most controversial companies in the database tend to be like the Exxons or the Metas, right? Like,
okay, then right, go ahead.
Performance is up. No one cares.
Okay, but then let's talk about a different case. So when I say controversies, I'm referring to a methodology developed by MSCI, right? But what about what we do here that MSCI doesn't do, and I say we probably do better than anyone else, is that we tag headline stories about everything, everyone.
Yeah.
So MSCI will miss the Cracker Barrel story, right? Where there was a backlash against Julie Masino. It won't be a controversy, certainly. But we will capture it, and the heat, if we're capturing enough heat, enough negative sentiment against Julie Masino, could that not increase the chances of her losing her job? Especially to your point, or I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet, but especially since she's a woman, right? That could increase the chances, all this heat against her, right? That she could be in the hot seat.
Yes, it could. But where that ends up showing up for Julie Masino is because Cracker Barrel's price was, the stock was cratering and she didn't have that much power. So in the end...
But the heat is a part of that equation.
The heat can exist for a CEO who is a very powerful CEO and the stock is up. But if they're not powerful...
I understand that, but it's a combination.
I think what you're talking about is the push. It's like the seat is hot and then something happens.
Except that, correct me if I'm wrong.
Because before that, I'll say it this way. Before that controversy, Julia Masino's seat was hot. Like she already was in a place where if she screwed up, the likelihood was she'd get tossed.
Because the company was hot, because it was a glass cliff scenario.
But that is where we're landing, which is something hasn't happened to get them pushed out yet. But you're one thing away from them getting pushed out. One loss, one controversy.
Look, where I'll agree with you is I agree, but the stock price really took a dive after the controversy was played out in the press. In fact,
of course.
In fact, I think it was starting to go up before that whole controversy. So it's possible that it's the news headlines alone is what tanked the share price. But anyway,
you're probably right.
Just semantics there, but keep going.
All right. So there are a couple bonus things where basically they just make your seat hotter. That is, there's a director on the board that has core industry knowledge, right? Like it's hard to get rid of Bob Iger if no one knows media. But when there's somebody else on the board who knows media, then dissent becomes easier with all the other factors. Or the CEO gets paid like not outsized, not massive outsized pay, right? Because a really outsized paid CEO could be on the hot seat, but directors also are kind of like, we just agreed to pay them a whole lot. We look really dumb if we get rid of them. How about the CEO is a woman or a person of color, specifically Black or Hispanic, which almost never happens. But if you're a woman, the leash, we know just for average tenures, the leash is much shorter.
Well,
so
it's
those
even
are like bonus tosses.
It's even shorter than that because anecdotally speaking, a lot of your diverse CEOs are stepping in less than favorable conditions.
Exactly.
They're not taking over companies that are soaring to the clouds. Like they're really like these let's throw this at the wall and see if it works. But if not, we'll pull the trigger in like 18 months.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I wonder how explicit that is. I wonder if those are like things that get said.
We know it to be true, and I would think that yes, they must be said, unless it's so built into like our biases that it doesn't even need to be said anymore, right? I don't know.
Well, all right. So I ran all this data, through the database. There are about 10,500 CEOs in the database that I looked at. About 6,300 of them had less than 30% influence, so a little more than half. And of those, 2,200 or so had CEOs that obviously were vulnerable because it was a family or a founder on the board. There was an executive chair there. It is way easier to get rid of a CEO when there's an executive chair on the board. It's a family-owned company or family, a representative on the board or founders on the board. Those CEOs are basically like rentals. They're rental CEOs, right? So when I eliminated them all and I ran all the data, I ended up actually with a very short list. And we're talking out of like 11,000 companies,
Well, I got to say, like, that's a good thing, right? If it was too long, it probably wouldn't be meaningful.
Well, that's why I have all these very specific narrowing techniques, because I wanted to say, let's narrow it down to real hot seats. There were 67 companies for whom all the criteria fit, and a few that had bonus criteria. Okay. Here, actually, the way we know that this worked is that of the 67 companies that were on the hot seat, 23 of them actually just flipped their CEOs.
Are you serious?
Less than 2 years. Fully a third of them have CEOs that are less than 2 years in the position.
Please tell me this will be incorporated in the new website.
We're going to start putting up like a hot seat logo somewhere in the platform, because
also a list. Maybe people love lists.
But what's interesting is there are like ripple effects to being able to identify these companies, because these are then companies that if they hire a female CEO, we know that they're glass cliff CEOs immediately. We can basically see in data, there's a glass cliff scenario, a hot seat CEO, an underperforming company, that CEO doesn't have a lot of power to begin with. These are the perfect situations where when you add female CEOs, they're set up for failure, right? In fact, of the 23 companies that have just flipped their CEOs, 3 of them were female CEOs: Northland Power, SGS, and Domino's Pizza. I mean, that percentage is 10%, slightly more than 10% of the companies that just flipped their CEOs that had hot seats.
Right.
Where the number of CEOs that are added that are women is way less than that on average. So we're adding women to glass cliff positions.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the data.
This is fascinating. This might be one of the best things you've stumbled upon.
The other knock-on effect here is succession planning. Mm-hmm. These are companies that I haven't gotten into the weeds of it, but when you actually look at the nom committees, there's a mix of horrible and decent. So you can actually pre-identify companies saying look, the company's underperforming. The CEO's, been here a while. The CEO, doesn't have a tremendous amount of power on this board relative to other boards. This board is really well suited to replace the CEO. Are you planning on it? Do you have a succession plan in place? These are perfect engagement questions. Here are 2 notable ones that I pulled out of the 67 that are worth talking about. Number 1 is UPS, United Parcel Service. Mm-hmm. The CEO is Carol Tomey. She became the CEO in 2020, but she's been on the board since 2003.
Wow.
She's been there for 23 years on the board. She has a low influence gap next to the next highest independent director. The board is hugely connected. 73% of the board has friends of friends in common through other boards and nonprofits.
Because this was like a Fred Smith board, right?
This was, no, that's FedEx.
Sorry.
UPS is totally different.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, while the board has a lot of connections in common, she is not one of them. They are not connected to her
Even
friends.
though she's been there for over 20 years.
Even though she's been there for over 20 years.
Tells you about the women on the board there, right there. Yeah, go ahead.
In her tenure as CEO, in the last 3 years, they've been in the bottom quartile for TSR versus peers. Plus, the board is full of people with core knowledge of the sector, and she is a woman. Mm-hmm. there are fewer combinations more toxic for CEO hot seats than those things.
Yes.
So UPS, if you're Carol Tomey, you should be watching your back, because if you underperform persistently,
good prediction,
there's going to be a lot of push on that. The other one that I thought was interesting that I didn't expect. Well, I'll give you one that I thought was interesting that has a but for, which is Occidental Petroleum, who has a female CEO, been there for 10 years. And if not for the Iran war,
where profits are up,
where profits are way up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, TSR was down in the last 3 years.
Right.
And the all the other things apply, where they're underperforming. The connections on the board, 80% of the board is connected, and she doesn't hold them the same connections. The influence gap was low. But for the Iran war, Occidental Petroleum might be looking for a new CEO.
Except politically speaking, this is the pattern of the Republican Party. They've been starting wars in the Middle East, and oil profits have surged. I mean, it's been going on for decades, since George Herbert Walker Bush. I'm just saying,
I'm not disagreeing with
this should be an expected pattern, that the CEOs of big oil companies, it's probably part of the reason why they're so close to that political party. I'm not to turn this into a political thing, but it is interesting that you mentioned that her safety has been enhanced by war profits. I think that's fascinating. But go ahead.
Yeah. So there is the weird upside. Although that said, I not in the data yet. Richard Jackson actually just succeeded Vicky Holub on June 1st of this year. So, I'm pointing them out, but I neglected to look at the recent change that they just appointed a new CEO.
Yeah. Okay.
So, they wouldn't even qualify. The other one worth mentioning here, and this is only because it surprised me. Halliburton CEO Jeff Miller.
Mm-hmm.
He's the chair of the board. He's president, CEO. He named CEO in 2017. According to the data, so he's been there for 11 years. He has one of the smallest gaps in power between himself and the next executive on our non-executive board member,
Robert Malone.
The board is 50% connected, and they've been in the bottom third of TSR in the 20 or the 30th percentile, basically, of TSR in the last 3 years. Is there a reason why we're not talking? He seems like somebody that no one's talking about.
Hey, put him on the list.
But according to the data, there should be a hot seat there.
Hey, the good news here is that in all of media, fantasy sports media, the amount of things they get wrong is through the roof. So if you get Jeff Miller wrong, it's okay. Put him on the list, though. That's a hot seat.
So
hot seat doesn't mean that your butt catches fire. It just means the seat's hot, and you might.
It just means
it might happen.
Could be. It could happen.
I like that one. That's a great one.
Well, I'll stop there because there's no point going over the other, 30 or 40 that make the cut. But the idea here is, can we identify CEOs in the hot seat? And the answer might be yes.
Before we end the show, that's fascinating, by the way, and I'm look forward, A, to the new website, and B, to having this information available. And I think you should add board chairs into that, see what happens with that.
Yeah, I have not done that yet. Yeah.
Before we end the show, I want to circle back to your Trump media question. According to NASDAQ listing rules, I wasn't aware of this. I don't know if it's different than the New York Stock Exchange. They actually don't have to have a meeting until the end of this year, because the fiscal year ended on the last day of last year. So they have to have a meeting before the end of 2026. Now, this doesn't happen. It's highly unusual. There is a mechanism in place at state law where shareholders can petition to order a meeting, right? Because it's been more than 13 months after the previous meeting. But as we know, the shareholders at Trump Media, it's a dual class dictatorship, right? They don't. While the mechanism exists, the non-Trump investors don't have an actual voice. So you're right to point it out. They haven't technically busted NASDAQ rules, but they're definitely breaking something. Like something is out of order there.
I mean, the fact is, first of all, NASDAQ, rewrite your rules, because that
absolutely.
That's absurd. That means a company could have a shareholder meeting on like the last trading
March.
day of the year, like December 30th, and then have another AGM on January 2nd, and wouldn't have to have an AGM until effectively 2 years later.
Well, and using this as an example, I think their last one was in April of last year.
Yeah.
So so you're right. According to NASDAQ, they can wait 20 months and it's not a big deal. It's okay with NASDAQ.
They can wait 23 months if they just do it December to January, right? So and then they don't even have to new materials, right? Because they just had it.
And I will say this, the state law sucks too, because there should be a mechanism at controlled companies where minority investors have a say. I mean, can push these things to the table. Yeah. Anyway, that's the Proxy Countdown for the week of July 27th, 2026. Join us, I don't know, in a few weeks. We'll get back to this show.
Yeah, there'll be a couple weeks break, I think, before we get back to the season.
When we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, forever on the lookout for shareholder shenanigans, dopey directors, scandalous CEO pay ratios, and wayward Band-Aids.